I think a lot of people are going to be on these medicines in the future. I think they're going to find out these medicines are going to prevent weight gain. So we're going to end up not only giving it to people who need to lose weight, we're going to give it to people that are at risk for gaining a lot of weight. I don't think it's going to be over the counter or anything, but they're going to be so abundant that we're going to see, and they're going to study it and show that maybe it's reducing heart attacks in people that don't even need to lose that much weight.
Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, welcome back to the American Glutton Podcast.
This is the fifth or sixth time now. I don't know.
Who can count? It's been so many. Yeah. The last time we talked, I think we started talking about GLP-1s, but I think it was before we even knew what they were. Like, you were just hinting at drugs that could really help with weight loss. But this was a couple of years ago, I think. Is that true? I think that's right.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we talked about the idea of obesity being a choice and how that doesn't really make much sense. And that, and I kind of hinted at, now we have these drugs that kind of give people agency. Doesn't mean it's a choice or whatever, but the drugs give that person the ability to make those decisions that they already know what to do, but just for whatever reason can't do them. So we hinted at it a little bit, but didn't go maybe deep
we didn't
dive.
Do the full blown. And I find anytime I talk about GLP-1 agonists, if I'm not just saying this is the greatest thing that's ever happened, somebody's mad at me. And if I'm not saying this is poison and awful,
mad at you.
Somebody's mad at you. But you can't have I find it's very difficult to have an honest, open conversation. And I think here's what I would say to you. I think there's some part of me where I go cocaine is super useful in packing the sinus cavity for rhinoplasty.
We do it in the ER. People had nosebleeds that we couldn't stop, and there were times where we
get some cocaine in there. Yes, a very useful medical intervention. And yet, I would say the broadest application is people at nightclubs, and that is not what it was intended to do. And so then I see, this is my personal experience. I've met some people who are prescribed these by doctors and they're doing them as they should. And then, I think conversations about protein increase and resistance training, that becomes fine tuning and completely a personal choice. But I also see, women friends of my wife who go to these clinics and hop on these things for 3 months or 6 weeks, lose 10 pounds, and then are I'm done, hop off. And I've actually seen them do this a few cycles where I'm guys, that's not that's not how it works. And then there's a whole other subset, which I want to talk to you about too, of people microdosing them, thin people that aren't even, and I'm what? So, I mean, there is also a misapplication out there. And so that, you should be able to talk about that and ask, is that benefiting them? Isn't there going to be some downside to those people that are just using them as they were using fad diets or, crash diets? That's not going to be good in the long run. I mean, maybe there's some point of those people going no, I just want to have my summer body. And then I don't care about my winter body. And if over the course of 10 years, my body fat percentage is much higher with my winter body, but my weight is the same, I don't really care. And that's fair too. If you don't care, what should I care for?
Yeah. Yeah. What you see on Instagram, TikTok, the things that get the big splash, these drugs are going to kill you. These drugs are going to make you blind. These drugs cause permanent gastroparesis and stomach paralysis. Those get the headlines. And then there's the other people like, these drugs are miracles. You should take them if you have menopause, regardless of if you have obesity. They're going to do X, Y, Z. And those reels, TikToks will do extremely well. And then there's the all right, so for their intended purposes, this is
Right.
the indication for when you do it. We don't have that much data on this population, this population. However, those will tank. So that's why we see what we see on social media. The algorithms really play into the sensational headlines. Yeah, I don't. I've seen a few doctors or a few other people on your podcast talk about them, but just briefly, GLP-1 natural hormone released from our intestines. The 1950s, 60s, they found this effect with people injecting glucose into the veins versus ingesting it. And what they wanted to see was how much insulin was released in each of those individuals. I would think that insulin would go higher or more in somebody that injected glucose right in the veins. Glucose goes to your pancreas. The pancreas senses it. The pancreas is what sends out insulin. Insulin is basically a key to unlock your cells to accept glucose into them so that the cells can use them. Otherwise, the glucose sits in your blood, not good. So our pancreas makes the insulin, allows the glucose to more readily get into your cells to be used. So we don't have a bunch of glucose in our system. What they found out though is that people that drank the glucose had higher amounts of insulin.
Oh,
So they called it this incretin effect. It's an intestinal hormone effect. I always thought it was the intestinal secretion of insulin. I heard that once, but then I have actually a book. I don't know if you can see in the background here that goes into the full history of the GLP-1, and that's actually not the case. But either way, they called it the incretin effect, intestinal secretion of a hormone. So then throughout the decades, they were trying to figure out what these incretin actually were, and they found another one called GIP, and they found another one called GLP-1, and it turned out that GLP-1 was the one that they could make into a drug. This lizard called a Gila monster. They found that it's venom. It's venom, which that's what other people use to fearmonger. A component of it was 40% similar to our own human GLP-1. The reason we can't use our own human GLP-1 is because it gets broken down within a minute or two. So it never has those appetite effects, even when we keep infusing it into our bodies. So they found ways to modify it. They used the Gila monster at first. That was the first GLP-1 receptor agonist approved, called Byetta or exenatide. Then the smart researchers figure out to modify human GLP-1, and so then they found a way to make it so our bodies don't break it down as quickly. The next one was called liraglutide, and then everybody's heard about semaglutide, which is Ozempic, or Wegovy is the brand name for weight management, Ozempic for type 2 diabetes. And now everybody's talking about tirzepatide, and tirzepatide is a GLP-1 slash GIP peptide. And so the way these things work though for weight loss, they hit receptors in the brain that basically, it's not only hunger, it's not only cravings, it's not only increasing satiety, so people can fill up with a salad and feel full in their stomach, but not satiated in the brain. Everybody's kind of felt that, I think, at some point in their life where you could actually drink a ton of sparkling water and feel full in the stomach, but like I'm still not satiated. I feel full, but not satiated. But they not only do that, also thinking about like specific foods that you crave. For me at night, it might be salty chips of some sort, salty, starchy chips. And then there's the concept of food noise, which essentially people are starting to talk about it more and they didn't realize they had it. It's just constant thoughts about food. Doesn't matter what type of food, doesn't it could be healthy, it could be whatever. It's just thoughts about food, when they're going to eat, how much they're going to eat, when their next meal is going to be, is there going to be enough food, and that type of thing. And these drugs will just dampen it or just completely resolve that. So that's why we've seen this big explosion going into, unfortunately, the Kardashian effect or whatever, Elon Musk effect. Although Elon Musk has an indication, you can tell he's struggled with his weight, or whether he struggled or not, I don't know, but he definitely qualified from a medical standpoint. But the celebrities and people, the rich housewives of Ethan Suplee, like the friend, the basic why not? You got enough money. The issue ran into in the past few years is the supply ran out. And so what that opened up to are the compounding pharmacies, due to some laws, allow compounding pharmacies to compound these drugs when there's a shortage, even of a patented drug from big pharma. So that's where we saw that big boom, although that is also that's getting shut down now. And so it's a whole thing. So anyway, we can go into that whole Kardashian effect and the issues around that, but the my basic standpoint is these drugs are they are amazing in the indicated populations. I do think it's possible someday maybe we're all going to take these to prevent chronic disease. What I urge though is caution because we've played this game before with other drugs in the past, and you never know of potential harms that can happen when the benefits weren't there. So the reason I say that is like in those with obesity and type 2 diabetes, we see clear the benefits far, far outweigh the risks. But if you're healthy, very small amounts of weight to lose, and you start taking a drug and you're not going to see much of a clinical benefit, that means there's only risk left. And we don't know the risk in these healthy populations. I have a feeling it's probably okay, but I always urge caution.
Yeah, but okay, I mean, fair enough. The actual downsides, like if you look at an obese person who takes the drug and you just say there's so much benefit versus risk, the risk is what? Like stomach aches? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
are the risks real severe risks?
the severe risks, if there are any, I mean, there's starting to be case reports of things, are extremely, extremely rare. The most common side effect we see is nausea. If that gets very high, that can lead to vomiting and nausea. So you're not taking in fluids, you're vomiting up fluids. That can lead to acute dehydration and potentially a kidney injury. So while these drugs actually protect kidneys overall, it's possible you can get so dehydrated that your kidneys don't get enough blood flow, and that can really injure them. So that's obviously a concern. You can get electrolyte abnormalities if you're throwing up and things like that. That's probably the most common thing we see: nausea, vomiting. For most people, it's very mild though, the nausea, and it goes away over time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely talked to people who have said they were too nauseous to continue taking it.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, there's lots of drugs that we don't discontinue because they cause nausea. Many people have that effect when taking opiates, and those haven't been discontinued. Like that's, that's like if you look at the side effects of opiates, I would say nausea is like the lowest rung versus like dependency and other bad side effects. And so like for me, and I don't know how severe this nausea is, but like for me, hearing nausea as a side effect does not make me think it's such a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we see constipation again, not a huge like that's not a big deal. The nausea and vomiting is the most worrisome. Some people get tired from the medicine. That's not a severe side effect. It's just like you're kind of tired, and that usually resolves over time. Some people continue to stay tired while on the drug, which is kind of interesting.
And do you think that that's directly because of the drug itself or because they're
Yeah.
taking in less energy?
So at first, when we first started seeing it, people thought that, oh, it's clearly it's because they're not eating as much. And that I think there's a component of that, but we see it in people that don't lose that much weight, which means that they're still eating a lot, or they're eating enough to meet their metabolic demands. And so there's likely an effect in the brain. There's certain chemoreceptors that it may have the same effect of like chemotherapy makes people tired, and is due to certain receptors. There's certain receptors that may overlap there with the GLP-1 medicines. They also modulate dopamine. So is the fatigue that they're feeling? What I see is like a lot of kind of and we call anhedonia, where you're just kind of like, nah, I don't know. They used to feel like going to the gym. They loved going to the gym. Now they're like, nah, I don't really feel like it. Well, that defeats a lot of the purpose of what we're trying to do here. We want people to be active, which is healthy, regardless of your scale weight. So I see a lot of that. I think there's an effect directly from the drug. It's not just the fewer calories that you're eating.
Right. And do you know if they're making any headway in whatever happens to fat cells after they're, engorged for so long? With their, I was reading that there's a genetic memory of size,
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, though, like these medicines will help you eat fewer calories to where, like, if you just stay on it and just don't continue to consume more calories, you'll maintain the weight loss. The idea, that study that came out this past year was basically trying to find a reason. Why do people, once they lose the weight, want to keep regaining the weight? And that there may be some explanation there, although the concept is that, like, oh, if metabolically they want to, if they retain their memory of what they were, is that sending a signal to make people increase their energy intake to regain their size again? Honestly, preliminary data, most of the data we have is just it's an increased appetite, which again you could say maybe that's from the fat cells sending a signal to increase the appetite, potentially. But if you take care of the appetite with these medicines, it doesn't matter. So that's kind of the concept.
And has there been any study that you're aware of that shows any amount of time where that decreases? And I'm thinking very selfishly of myself. Like, I lost a tremendous amount of weight, and I still work diligently to maintain my weight, and wonder, like, do I get to 10 years and it shuts off, or we don't know?
I would say we don't know. There's some suggestion that the longer you hold on to it, maybe your body can reset or whatever. But like what we see is that over time, the body just continues to try to regain the weight. And you're finding habits to kind of just continue to combat that. But that's the gist.
Yeah, sorry, my dog started freaking out, and I'm gonna have them cut this section just right now. What I'm saying, Gene, come here, come here. Sorry about that, Dr. Nadolsky.
Out in the background.
My little anxious travel dog.
Devil dog, is that your emotional support dog?
Yeah. In fact, I'm gonna hold her here and just tell her to shut the fuck up. Okay, here we go. Um, okay. So all in all, with America being like having obesity as one of its driving factors for disease and trouble altogether, these drugs are kind of a miracle.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest breakthroughs that we've seen in a long time for, I mean, just cardiometabolic health for weight. Like you think about diet and exercise, 5 or 6% total body weight loss over the course of a year, and hopefully people hold that off. That's 5 or 6% of the weight. So if you're 200 pounds, we're talking about like 10 pounds like of weight loss and keeping it off. And then eventually that starts waning over time. And then you think about bariatric surgery, 30 or so percent. So if you're 200 pounds, 10% would be 20 pounds, 20% would be 40, 30% would be 60 pounds. Again, people aren't usually getting bariatric surgery at 200 pounds, but I'm just trying to give examples. These were in that 15% to 20% range right now, and it's going to get higher with these newer drugs. So now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, now we actually have bariatric surgery like results in a medicine. And what I would say is that like these medicines work in a way that bariatric surgery just can't on a biological level in the brain. There is some thought that the bariatric surgery may modulate some of your own natural hormone changes that may help with that. But what patients say is that nothing helped with the satiation food noise like getting these drugs, even after they had I have a ton of bariatric surgery patients that are using these medicines. So They are quite miraculous. Nothing, there is no free lunch, but when it comes to like, when you look at a drug, you want to go benefit versus risk. The risks are relatively low, but there are potential risks.
But there's risk to Advil. Like
Yeah,
you can,
correct.
by the way, can't you die from Advil? Can't you have like acute
Yeah,
liver poisoning from Advil? That's an over-the-counter drug.
kidneys, Tylenol is the liver thing. I mean, they have a very well-known what we call like a therapeutic index to where it's like we know that if you take this much, it's safe. But yeah, the dose can potentially hurt you at higher levels. Any drug, even vaccines, which are extremely uh, amazing, once in a while people have an adverse reaction to it. So like I always just urge that to just make sure that so that again, I clearly I'm a shield for them. That's all I talk about online now because like
Yeah.
if
How
I
much is Pfizer paying you?
well, it would be Eli
Eli
Lilly. It's
Lilly.
actually I didn't take any money from them yet. I may actually, I decided I was very against taking money to be on advisory boards. I asked my audience like so I keep getting offered money from big pharma to like be on their advisory boards to tell them like, hey, here's my clinical insights and here's what I think you guys should do. And I was like, I don't, because it shows up publicly. I look like a big pharma show. And everybody said, it's just going to be your haters that won't like it. And those people weren't going to like you anyway. We all love you regardless.
Right.
And I was like,
10 years in of not taking money. And
yeah,
if you don't dramatically change your tune, if you don't do an about face on some of these things, like what if what if suddenly everything reversed and you like joined a board and you were suddenly like, it's all sugar. It's just sugar, something like that.
just drink sugar, take these drugs.
Oh my
Yeah, that
God.
would,
That's a thing. That's coming.
yeah. I've seen people promote the sugar diet now.
I
And it's
believe, like keto, that is on its way. It's going to be an all carbohydrate. It's going to be like no fat, no protein dieting.
It's quite amazing because why can't people just be normal? People have to be so extreme. Again, this is incentivized by social media. Social media loves the extremes, and talk about dopamine. It gives people like attention that feels good. All right, I'm going to keep doing it. It can be addictive. So, sugar, yeah, the sugar diet, I've seen it. I'm just like, oh my God, these are keto people now going to completely sugar. I'm like, can you guys just be normal?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's wrong with that? So yeah. Anyway, I decided to take a advisory board for Novo Nordisk, and what I'm going to do though is I'm going to actually take that money and donate it and find a way to get people that can't get the medicine
Oh,
uh,
great.
and get a medicine. It's not a ton of money, but it's something. I don't know if it's like six grand or something like that. I have to look at it, but I'm going to show exactly here's where the money's going. So just so everybody knows, this is the gist. But the drugs they are amazing. I have a clinic, so I started the program called Sequence, which was bought by Weight Watchers. I left Weight Watchers to basically make the evolution of what I believe these online clinics should be, what I call Vineyard, and basically doing what we talk about. It's strength training. I have my Lift RX program in there, a dietitian. So like you really I think the evolution is optimizing people on these because the stuff that I see, what other doctors, they literally just send them on the drug. People end up in the hospital throwing up, and then they don't see them for a month or so. And it's like, hey, how'd you do? Like, well, I ended up in the hospital needing fluids. And it's like, well, you could have prevented that
Right.
with strong lifestyle counseling with the drug. But that's what I think the evolution is going to be with these things.
And are you counseling your patients on protein? Is protein a factor? Like in my head, it's a factor. I assume it's a factor. Is that true, or is that something you as a doctor are telling people to do?
Yeah, I do, but I have my personal. Each patient has their own personal dietitian too, who either uses the medicine or has a ton of experience with these medicines, and patients using them and doing nutrition. So I'll mention it. The dietitian will counsel on it. We have a whole program there. We Now the thing is, protein. There are a lot of people pushing protein. Like I even see these doctors like protein's the most important thing. It's like it's not even close compared to resistance training. It's not even close. Resistance training is magnitudes higher of importance than protein. Having said that, not everybody wants to do resistance training. So the next best thing to do is optimize your protein. And yes, you can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time and do both. And really, the amounts of protein that you need to really like be good enough is not that much. We're talking instead of like for us, we're trying to get a gram per pound, which is 2.2 grams per kilogram of weight. And then if you look at, some of Stu Phillips, if you've had him on the podcast, I don't know, but he's a protein guru. He'll say anything over 1.6 grams per kilogram is like you're starting to split hairs.
Mhm.
And that's somewhere around that, whatever, zero point 0.8 grams or zero point 0.7 something grams per pound. What we do is like when you look at the obesity literature and people that have a lot more adipose tissue, fat tissue, and it's leaner individuals that really need that higher amount of protein per body weight. And somebody has a lot of body fat, you can get down to like the 1.2 grams per kilogram and you'd be fine. So like someone who's 220, to make it easy, someone who's 220 pounds, getting them that's 100 kilograms. So getting them 120 grams of protein in that person, any more than that, you're going to start splitting hairs. And really, it goes into the resistance training. So ideally, I'd get them in there 3 times a week. But like if they can only do 1 or 2 times a week, full body, like getting close to failure on those sets, like you're good.
Yeah. I didn't realize I mean, listen, I love resistance training and it's something I do all the time, but I didn't realize it was dramatically more important than protein.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll see. Protein's a distant second in terms of importance. I mean, that's when you think about prisoners. They're not getting much.
Oh, right. And you can be jacked if you want to in prison.
Or some of these people gain tons of muscle despite very little bits of protein because that's all they're doing is lifting weights. That's anecdotal, but like we have data on this. They've researched this pretty well. We are in our clinic. We are studying this. Quite extensively. We are getting DEXA scans on people and doing an actual study on it to kind of see the real world changes of what you see with people taking these medicines and giving them the advice, not forcing them to do resistance training in the protein, but giving them advice and then watching what happens to them. So far so good. We have some people that gain muscle on these things. So like as long as they're doing the good stuff, I think we're going to see a lot of good things. There
Yeah.
are new drugs
They're new what?
new drugs that are. I may have seen Mike Israetel, Dr. Mike, posting about this. Better than steroids, and these are. Do you know what myostatin is?
Yes, I've heard about that. With like, and it's the super jacked like Argentinian cows are
Yeah,
full
yeah.
of myostatins, right?
Yeah, my Belgian Blue, and there's Wendy the Whippet. We had a podcast with my chief science officer, Grant Tinsley, who was telling us about Wendy Whippet, the Whippet, the dog that had their myostatin turned off, and it was just this jacked dog. You can see the jacked cows as well, but they've genetically blocked their myostatin. So there are drugs that are they're monoclonal antibodies that basically go and block our myostatin. And people do gain muscle. They don't have to do anything. They just start gaining muscle and losing fat. Sounds like the holy grail. I always urge caution again, because like you don't know what some sort of offshoot effect of doing this in humans could have.
Have they done it in humans yet?
Yeah, they've been doing it. They're in phase. So what they're doing with these drugs is they're putting them with these GLP-1 medicines. And so one of the phase two studies with a very well-known myostatin inhibitor called bimagrumab is coming out here in 2 weeks. It's at this ADA conference. I'll be watching closely what happens, but they combine it with semaglutide, which is the Ozempic Wegovy drug, this bimagrumab, and so people are waiting. Like I always urge caution, where it's like, man, when you start messing around with muscle, you don't know what other muscles and other receptors are going to happen with these drugs.
Right. Okay. So like that's my first question. Like, because the heart is a muscle, and this is like I have an enlarged heart because I was so large for so long, and it's not something that they're excuse me, terrifically worried about. But when I do EKGs and all the heart tests and stress tests and all of that, the thing I'm told is my heart is enlarged.
Yeah.
That is simply because I was carrying around so much excess weight for so long, I'm told. But then it's also a factor with bodybuilders, right? And so, like, isn't that like, or people that do growth hormone, like everything grows. You're not just building your pecs.
Yeah. So the hopefully that it's skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle is a little bit different, smooth muscle like our intestines a little bit different, but there may be some of these myostatin receptors in these places. I don't know what to expect. I do know that there was one that I just reported on where they did it's trevogrumab. It's another myostatin inhibitor, and then they added it with this garetosmab, which is an activin A. Doesn't matter and then they put it with semaglutide, the Ozempic, Wegovy stuff. The people with all triple therapy, two people died, and they don't think they're like, no, it's not the drug, it's not the drug, but it's like and they're like, we can't say it's a drug cause and effect. So we'll see if that actually gets through. But this is why we do these phase one, phase two, phase three, because you'll start seeing the signals of like, ooh, there's some harm going on here, or hey, it looks good. And then you keep going and you do these cardiovascular event trials where you go like, all right, let's just put everybody on this drug versus a placebo, and let's see what happens to heart attacks and strokes. That's what they've done that with these GLP-1 receptor agonists, and that's where it's like, wow, these drugs, the biggest side effects are like reduced heart attacks and
Right.
strokes and stuff like that. When they start adding these drugs, it'll just be really interesting to see because I'll be a believer when they're like, wow, people are having fewer heart attacks with these muscle building myostatin inhibitors. I'll be like, all right, fine, give me one of these because I could stand to have a little bit extra muscle. That would be nice. But
How far are we potentially away from these? Are we years and years away?
a few years, they're in phase two, going in phase three, and the phase three are probably going to take another year or two, and then they'll report on it. And these things are pretty easy to recruit for too. That's the thing. Like, who wants to lose weight and build some muscle?
Right.
Everybody. You're gonna get, I think they're gonna be abused by bodybuilders. I mean, you got Mike posting about it on a huge YouTube channel. I guarantee everybody's chomping at the bit to get these biological, what seem to be amazing drugs. I always urge caution because I'm like, you never know until the data comes out on these things. But it's a few years away.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a question. As a doctor, I'm sure you've seen new drugs come to market. They're very expensive. How long does it take for that price to go down? Because, like, if this is truly a miracle drug and, some portion of the population a large portion of the population would really benefit from them. Um, like, my thought is really, doesn't it behoove, and I just don't think it works this way, but like if there's like whatever the strain on healthcare and especially financially obesity is, couldn't we just subsidize these drugs to offset that, because they are expensive? I think about lifelong drugs. Like, I have a kid with type 1 diabetes, and unless they figure out magically regrowing beta cells in a pancreas,
Not out of the realm.
right,
Not out of
sure. And I hold out hope. I'm not an utter pessimist, but like, it's been 16 years and we really don't seem to be any closer in that. Although I did hear that China has figured something out, while I'm not holding my breath to see what they've done. But like, insulin, I remember when she was first on insulin, she was a kid and like dropped a vial of her insulin, and it was like, holy shit, that was $1,000 you just dropped. And now I think it's certainly come down in price, but it's taken 16 years in some kind of legal intervention for there to be like a standardized price that like hopefully most people can afford. And I believe it's like 30 something dollars a vial now is like I don't think you're allowed to charge more than that, even though that's what I pay with insurance. So it's like, what is insurance actually paying? I don't know. It's very complicated, but I know it's not $1,000 a vial anymore, which is nice, but it's taken a while.
So what I think is going to happen, these drugs aren't that expensive to make relatively. They've done those analyses, $5-10 a month or something like that. They're charging $1,200 at the pharmacy. The issue is there's these middlemen called pharmacy benefit managers, and they do these rebates and really try to negotiate with the manufacturers and insurances. Goes from you then see the prices jack up to $1,200 when it should really be much cheaper than that. I want to see some new company coming in that maybe their drug's not amazing, but it's within the realm, and they go, we're going to undercut everybody. We start seeing everybody else trying to compete, because I think once we start getting a super affordable, we're going to see most people go on that version, even if it's just in the realm of weight loss. You've seen this with other drugs in the past. So I think capitalism will play out here in hopefully the right way. We just need these competitors to get through, and there's multiple of them trying to get through phase 3 trials right now, ensure safety. These drugs look really good, similar to what we're seeing here, or even better in some cases. So I think what we're going to see is a precipitous drop in the prices. It's just kind of painful right now in these times. And that's why you see people going what's called the gray market. They'll go to research peptides and they'll get them for pretty cheap. And they're going to take the risk of getting these peptides from God knows where to hopefully have those effects that we see with the same pharmaceutical drugs. But I wouldn't recommend that, obviously. But that's why we're seeing people, because they're desperate for help and they see their friends on the drugs. They're like, well, this is the way I can get it cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, $1,200 a month seems like a pricey thing for a drug. I picked up blood pressure medicine the other day, and with my insurance, it was free.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, what? Because I pay so much for my kids' diabetes stuff, even with insurance, but my blood pressure, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if I'm a good boy because I've been taking it for so long. And they're benefiting me, but my kid's been on this insulin stuff for 16 years, and we're still, with all the gadgets that she has, we're still at like $1,000 a month.
Yeah, insane. Yeah, the cool thing is the Eli Lilly, again, I'm not getting paid by them to say this, but they've found a way to get away from going through insurance and these PBMs, so you can get it for anywhere from $349 a month for the initial dose, and then it goes to $499 a month. Cheaper, but not cheap. But I think over time we're going to see that come down into the couple $100 range.
And Eli Lilly is the one that does the dual receptors.
Yeah, it's the GLP-1/GIP.
So isn't that better? Isn't that the better drug anyway?
It's better tolerated. It gets more in the 20% total body weight range in terms of average weight loss, compared to the semaglutide, which is more around 15 or so percent. And so, yeah, it's a better drug overall. But I think we're going to see other players coming in.
Well, if that's a better drug, why is that one not the one that's being? Is it just because I don't hear about that one as much? Ozempic, which is a type 2 diabetes medicine, that's just.
They were first to, they weren't technically first to market, but like they're the first well-known. That's the one that got picked up for calling everything Ozempic. Everything's
Right.
just called, even though that's the type 2 diabetes version, it's really Wegovy. And it's Zepbound is the tirzepatide. Just that's the one that's like, if I'm reaching for one of these drugs, it'd be Zepbound. Now there is a newer one that might be coming out in the next year or two called retatrutide. It's a triple agonist. People call it retatrutide. It's technically, because they're all semaglutide. People call it semaglutide. It's semaglutide. Nobody ever calls it semaglutide, even though that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. But retatrutide, it's a GLP-1 slash GIP, which is GIP for those listening, is again one of those. It was another one of those natural incretin hormones in our gut that was found, and they found a way to make a peptide that hits both receptors at the same time. It's not two drugs put in one, it's the peptide actually hits the two receptors. Whether that's the reason it causes more weight loss is hotly debated. There are a lot of reasons for that, but uh, they've now made a triple agonist, so that GIP, GLP-1, and glucagon. And glucagon's a hormone that helps keep our blood sugar regulated, but sometimes we have to give people glucagon. Actually, you probably know glucagon.
I've had to give it to her once. It was the
Yeah.
scariest day of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in people who are insulin dependent, diabetes, mellitus, if their blood sugar goes too low, you give glucagon, and it helps their liver make uh, more sugar and helps release more sugar into the bloodstream. It has other effects, though, and one of them, it might increase metabolic rate. It might have direct effects on the liver for uh, fat oxidation. So
Oh, wow.
I've had patients in those trials, they're early trials, and these people are melting fat off their body. It's so powerful that people sometimes have to drop out of the study because they're losing weight too quickly and too much. So that's the one that I think hopefully it's safe. Again, when you start adding on other components, you got to study it all over again. We know GLP-1 safe. It looks like GLP-1 slash GIP is safe. When you add on glucagon, it looks really good on paper, but you don't know until you do it. But people are melting fat off their body, just ridiculous amounts. That's truly going to look like bariatric surgery in an injection.
Yeah, and bariatric surgery, man, I was really too scared to ever even consider it.
Yeah.
And and then everybody I've talked to who's had bariatric surgery, one for one, said they all were told, like, you're going to have to come in and do another procedure in a year or two. Some of them didn't get a second procedure done, but most of them were told that, which I'm just like, that seems like a lot to undergo versus just getting a shot.
Yeah. It, it's cost effectiveness too. Like the bariatric surgery is one and done, but people regain their weight with it. These medicines are expensive. Here's my prediction. Even though I'm urging caution, I think a lot of people are going to be on these medicines in the future. I think they're going to find out these medicines are going to prevent weight gain. So we're gonna end up not only giving it to people who need to lose weight, we're going to give it to people that are at risk for gaining a lot of weight. And I don't think it's going to be over the counter or anything, but they're going to be so abundant that we're going to see, and they're going to study it and show that maybe it's reducing heart attacks in people that don't even need to lose that much weight. That's what I think. I think we're going to see it, but I can't say for sure. I I think most people, it's possible that I'm on a tiny little dose. So the microdosing is actually my friend Tina, Dr. Tina. She's a naturopathic doctor. I was on her podcast and we were laughing about how all she said is like, I don't know, I'm kind of using them in kind of off label in patients in very low doses in people that don't need to lose much weight because we are seeing anti-inflammatory effects from
Oh,
the drug.
wow. Yeah, I think some of my wife's friends are doing that.
So it took off. Now everybody's talking about microdosing, and she was, as far as I know, she was the one that kind of made that a trend. And she's like, I never meant it to be a real thing. I was just kind of saying I was doing this off label. Anyway, there's not really good data on it, but I could see it. I could see small little doses, potentially for cardiovascular risk reduction for people that have autoimmune diseases that have that are in overall chronic inflammatory states. I always urge caution around this without much data.
Right. You brought up glucagon, and it just sent me down a rabbit hole of thought. And of course, this is very specific to my experience with a kid with type 1 diabetes. When she has a crashing low blood sugar, and she can't get juice. And this has only happened to us once, where her blood sugar was so low, she wasn't quite catatonic and non-responsive, but we couldn't get juice into her fast enough. I think her blood sugar was down around like 25. Like, that's insanely low.
Yeah.
And we had to give her a shot of glucagon. Are you telling me that that's what is in this one with that's hitting 3 receptors, or it's attacking the receptor that produces glucagon?
It is literally, it's a glucagon agonist, meaning a glucagon receptor, it hits glucagon, just like it's glucagon.
Oh,
But when
wow.
you combine it with GLP-1, so your blood sugars won't go higher because the GLP-1 will keep your blood sugars lower and the GIP. So, and funny thing happens when you start combining all these things and you get this triple agonism, it kind of counteracts those effects. And so now you see this accelerated weight loss. I mean, just unheard of weight loss. It's insane. I have these patients that are in the clinical trials using it. I'm just like, what?
And okay, let me ask you this. And you're saying, like, it's not because they're just not eating enough? It's not because they're just down to 600 calories a day?
So that might be. So these people do report even higher amounts of appetite suppression than you see with tirzepatide, just the GLP-1/GIP. So I believe there's a higher amount of appetite suppression from that. But there's thought that with the glucagon agonism, you also see this increased metabolic rate. Again, these are things they need to study, but that's the thought behind it. And so if now all of a sudden, instead of just eating fewer calories, which they are doing, you start boosting up their metabolic rate just a little bit. Now we're just like, again, putting on the afterburners. And people are already doing it. So you can get, again, I don't urge, I tell, please don't do this, but there are people doing it on the gray market. You can go out and buy research grade retatrutide, and people are saying, oh yeah, this stuff. And it's, again, I urge not to do that because let's say you got pure stuff. We haven't gone through phase 3 trials. We don't know there could be something lurking that it's like, oh God, this is killing people
Right.
on a rate. But then at the same time, you get research grade. Are you the one going out and testing the stuff to make sure it's safe? Like if it is what they say it is. Some people do say it's pure. Like I've had some certificates of analysis from people that do it. They're like, look, it's 99% pure, just like pharmaceutical, whatever. I'm like, all right, man, I'm not messing around with it. I wouldn't do that. But anyway, I think it'll be approved in another year or two, as long as safety looks good.
Yeah. The glucagon thing, and I know you're not an endocrinologist, but you're in this universe. And I'm again thinking selfishly about my kid right now. Is that something, because the latest I've heard for type 1 diabetes is that they're creating a pump that will be giving you insulin along with a microdose of glucagon in case you start to go low. So it will be, in essence, acting as an external pancreas. And now you say there's this one GLP-1, but is that something my kid should take?
No, only if she had weight issues
Right.
so I wouldn't. Yeah,
But I
no,
mean, if we can we separate out? Listen, this is me thinking like really just idealistically. Can we separate out that one agonist where it's just going to the glucagon receptor and give her that? Is that something that would be beneficial to her? Not the whole thing. She doesn't need the whole thing.
yeah, no, not unless her blood sugars got so low.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. I thought for a second there was a breakthrough
No.
for her, but it seems like the diabetes stuff moves so pathetically slowly. And I guess the weight stuff has too, because we've had like nothing. And then in 3 years, it seems to be like, we could solve this, you know?
Yeah, I know. It just, I think we're going to see some crazy stuff over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. I'm just relieved that my kid has insulin versus like I've looked at images of the first batch of kids, I believe it was in Europe, who were dying of diabetes, and they're all like just in hospital beds wasting away basically. And then you see them giving them the first shots of insulin, which at the time was like a once a day shot, I believe. And you see the life come into them over this series of photographs, and they're old black and white photographs. And it does seem like such a miracle. And similarly, you could probably write, like I think you posted this not long ago, like for the, and you also, I like how careful you are with this stuff, because you're like, correlation doesn't mean causation and all of this, but like for the first time ever, obesity ticked down in America.
Yeah, although I'm friends with some really good epidemiologists who are like, well, hold on a second, let's wait till more data comes out, because I can't even remember the flaws that were in it. It was
Oh,
like, do we even have these drugs when the data were people actually taking these drugs? Anyway, but I do see, if I were to predict, people are always like, you can't drug your weight out of this. I'm like, actually, I think we could. And
right.
that sounds insane. That mean that you're definitely getting paid by big pharma to say that. And it's no, I just think, hypothetically speaking, watching what happens to my patients taking these medicines, if you put somebody on that looks like they're going to start gaining weight into that obesity range, you put them on that dose and it prevents them. Over time, we're preventing people from developing it despite and I do think we have to clean up our food environment somehow. I don't know how we're going to do it, but despite the food environment, we can prevent obesity with these drugs, I believe, and they're only going to get more powerful and stronger. So it sounds terrible to drug our way out of this.
But we've drugged our way out of lots of stuff. Like, this is the thing. Like, I for sure can get on board with thinking like the big bad evil pharmaceutical corporation. And I have those feelings from time to
Yeah,
time.
but
But at the same time, my kid is alive because of the pharmaceutical company manufacturing insulin. She would not be alive today. So I'm kind of torn here. We've drugged our way out of people dying from type 1 diabetes. And people still do, which is a shame because it can be handled. There's lots of famous people, like athletes with type 1 diabetes, and one of the Jonas brothers, I think Nick, but I'm not totally sure. But I know it was a big deal for my kid when she found out. Like, there's famous people living normal lives who have this disease that I have. Polio is all but eradicated. That was done through drugs. You go back through life, and it's like lots of stuff was killing people, and now it's not because of drugs. I don't
technology.
I don't understand that impulse totally. I do understand the impulse to hate the big corporate
Yeah.
behemoth that's only profit driven. I understand that.
I always say, like, look, you want to go back to using a rotary phone? You want to use telegrams, whatever? No, I want my iPhone where I can text you in a second
Yeah.
and have a whole computer in my pocket that's only going to get more powerful. Technology's good. It's like, we just got to study it, make sure it's, beneficial. But as long as we do that, it's because we moralize weight. That's what I think. We
Right. It's
moralize.
a moral failing, so you can't handle it with a chemical intervention.
Yeah, you have to grin and bear it. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and that's a struggle for people to think about, because it's like, well, no, you should work hard. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you can do it, like you. I was at a podcast. I was talking about you. I was like, he did it. That's it's amazing.
You know what? It wasn't easy. And had these things been available to me 7, 8 years ago, I would be on them for sure because I tried everything else. In the
Yeah.
90s or even earlier, whenever it was, my parents put me on fen-phen. And I even found a shady doctor to give me thyroid medicine once, many decades ago. And I lost weight that first week, but I also stopped sleeping. And so like I was like, this is not worth it to my life. So like, I would for sure be on these. I tried the diet called the GC diet, HCG diet. I tried that, lost lots of weight, but gained it all back immediately. I'm not scared of these things, but like, yeah, you can do it, but I did everything else for 40 years, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you ever need it, you know where to go. I got your back.
Okay, good. Dr. Nadolsky, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
See ya.